at the moment, this is the name that we are going with, Just Learning Club, because we have realized once we started actually inviting people to it that we do need a name. And we have gotten one in Russian and one in English. So we can move on right to the next slide.
Dina, how it will sound in Russian?
Учимся вместе.
Учимся вместе, okay.
That's the working title, probably.
We decided that we need to, we kind of like it. We're not certain about it, but if it sticks, it sticks. Because the most important thing is to do it. Yeah. So we've been calling it horizontal learning because that's the main idea. That everyone studies whatever they want and however they want and however much they want. And there is no common topic of study or subject. There isn't a most important thing or more or less important. Everything is equal, and you get equal amount of time, not to the minute, but rather equal amount of time to talk about your own progress. And nobody is making anyone study. So it's on their own volition, people do something. And whether it is a video course, whether it is a very difficult book or something very easy, or even maybe they study at university and they just need some extra motivation and extra discussion on whatever they're doing. That doesn't matter. And there are no teachers, but we feel that a moderator or two, depending on the size, but we feel like one will be enough, is needed to kind of organize the meetings, to make sure everybody knows what's happening when, to keep the timing, and to make sure that the atmosphere is very respectful to everyone and supportive. Then
shall I go to the next? Shall I go to the next?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the discussion part is optional, and it usually, like in our experience, it varies. So something can really spark a conversation, and then it lasts a bit longer. And then something is just everybody listens to, and then they are like, okay, thanks. That's interesting. So that's not obligatory to have a discussion. So who do we think it's for? Is for people who like, and this is an important distinction, are able to study on their own. So it's not for people who don't see it as an option at all, I think. It's and don't know how to do it and don't have any ideas on that. And then, but then it is, why is it needed at all? It's because many people who do like to study on their own and are able to do it lack kind of a schedule, discipline, and often motivation comes and goes. So when you have a group where you can share what you're doing and how you're progressing in it, then it really helps. Yeah, so we can move.
Next one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we have started testing it in January on ourselves. So we've been meeting regularly, me and Anna, and just sharing whatever we've been studying, completely not telling each other in advance, like I've been reading this or I've been watching that. You just come and talk. And I found that the regularity with which I kept doing something really has risen since we started. Like, it's so much easier to do stuff when you know you get to share it. And when you know you get to talk about it. And if you don't understand something, that's even an interesting point, because you're like, okay, I'll talk about it and maybe together we'll figure it out. And so it becomes not a problem.
So it's probably something like streaming. Yes, so you're just streaming your learning process, and in the process you're just describing what you're experiencing.
And then we started talking if we could add more people, and if it would be worse or better for us. And so we decided to try. And in July, we started the group. And at the moment, we have 2 people, and we want to get it up to 6 and see if it's possible to still, for everyone, have enough time. And another interesting side thing is foreign languages, that we just considered if that's possible, so you learn your own language, whatever you are doing. Like, I'm learning Luganda and Anna is learning Spanish. And again, we just come and share, like, I've learned this and I've learned that. And because languages are interesting in general, it is quite motivating to then go on and learn more. And then tell people, like, oh my God, this is so difficult. And maybe even share some text or some phrases or talk. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So what this whole thing is based on is the culture of self-education, which we would like to spread. And the format is easy, and we want it to stay easy, and we want to maybe create some sort of a simple method book, like a list or something of things that you need to do to create such a group, like similar to AA, because it would be amazing if such groups would be a normal thing that you can join, that you can participate in for a while or for a long time. And this way, which brings me to the next point, everybody gets to validate their personal interest. And this whole thing of, oh, I'm just reading books and it's nothing important, or I'm just wasting my time doing, I don't know, my knitting or whatever. Everything that you study gets some sort of a validation through this. And you get discipline, motivation, like I said. And because you're talking, you get to reflect on what you're doing, because you actually have to say it out loud to other people. And so, and people just inevitably, I feel, start helping each other. And yeah, you just meet new people and you connect to them. That's important as well. Okay. The next one.
Are we done here? Okay.
Yeah, so we feel that this format could be transferred to educational environment for students, for teachers, for professors. It could be used for personal development in corporate world, or it could be a network of clubs, like I said, similar to AA. And yeah, let's.
Yeah.
Dina, AA, you mean Alcoholic Anonymous?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so this is what we kind of came up with as limitations. And of course, there might be more. So we feel that the number of participants has to be strictly limited, because otherwise not everybody gets to participate fully. So, and at the moment, we want to see if 6 is a good limit. Also, you don't want to make the meeting too long. Currently, it's 90 minutes, and we would like to keep it somewhat that. And then, of course, the number of groups can be limited, but then you can train more moderators. And of course, each person gets to speak for a short time, but usually that's enough. Yeah. Okay, and I think we're done.
Okay, I'm closing the sharing, okay? Okay.
So what do you think?
Thanks a lot. It's very interesting, very interesting. And I
Maybe you'd
personally have
like
a
to
lot of questions.
clarify something. Maybe you would like to clarify something.
Yes, there is a lot of clarification question and many other things that I have. Like you said that you, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said that you started that in January and then in July. So I'm not sure I understand what's the difference. Also, it looks like you started maybe with, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe that with one focus and now you are in another focus. Like the last focus was studying foreign languages. But what was the first focus? Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was only the one.
Yeah, a little bit different from that. So in January, we started doing it just the two of us, between me and Dina, because we were reading some books that are enriching our I don't know, knowledge and expertise in education and all. And we felt like we want to discuss it just as we read it, and we need to speak about it while we read it. And so we started doing it on our own. And then in July, we started adding more people. First, one person came, and then another person came. So now there was 4 last time we met. So it was us together and 2 more. So probably it could be an open group, so a person can join anytime, not necessarily like when the group starts, maybe after 2 weeks, maybe after 1 month, maybe after 3 months, but maybe it's not a very good idea because it's good to when everybody knows each other's contexts. So we don't know yet. But what we would like to do is like every 3 months, we would like to have a reflection meeting or to sum up. So what a person has learned so far, what to speak about his outcomes. Because this is like not about estimation, so there are no marks. You know, this is maximum free of judgment process, but still it feels like something needs to be done so a person can feel that he has come a certain way, he has reached somewhere with this process. And about languages, sorry, no, languages are just a side project from that, and it's like an experiment. So what can be done with languages? So can really groups like that work with studying languages? So it's more a narrow focus, but in this learning group, we would like to keep it as broad as possible.
And so the first group, correct me if I'm wrong, because I still couldn't visualize that. It's more like discussion of the books, or what is it?
It can be books, but not necessarily. So it can be online courses, like somebody's doing a Coursera course on their own, and yes, they would like to track it somehow. or anything else. So the person who most recently joined us, she's doing some kind of research on museums in Russia and all the businesses that were connected with museums. And so she's just doing it everywhere. She's reading Wikipedia, some other materials. So it's like a free research. She's collecting it in one place. So the media is not so important.
No, I do that. And sorry, and Anna, feel free to jump that, because right now I'm asking mostly questions of clarification questions, just like visually, I would call it not clarification even, but visualization. But although if you think about visualization is clarification, it's for clarity, for seeing things. Yeah. So my question is
clear vision.
Yeah, for clear vision, this is exactly the same. But I think visualization means like I can envision it. Like it's more. That's why I like that metaphor better. So and again, I apologize for me moving constantly. I will switch it
Very
off.
dramatic.
Distract us. Yeah, I'm playing with this. So my another question is, how often do you meet? Like first time and the second time, like once a week, twice, every other 2 weeks, once a month. What's the frequency?
Dina, would you like to answer that?
Once a week or once every 2 weeks. Like currently we're meeting every Saturday, and then when the year starts in September, because our current participants are teachers, so they said that maybe in September we switch to once in 2 weeks.
Okay.
And you're meeting online, right? Only online.
All right. Okay. And tell me, like, can you bring us to one of your meetings in a sense, just virtually in the sense, just describe that, like. Imagine that now we have this meeting, and it doesn't matter which group you choose, the language or the other group. I don't know. Do you have any names for these groups or not? But what it will be look like? Like, can you bring, like, for example, like imagine that 4 of us met in the first group, not language group, and so what will happen? First of all, will everybody come at the same time or not? That's already interesting. And what we were talking about, how it will work. What's the role of mediator?
So the first 5 to 10 minutes, depending if it's the first meeting or not, we'll spend on introducing ourselves. Yeah, so hi, I'm Dina, and I'm one of the moderators, and I've been currently studying this book, Theory U by Otto Scharmer, and that's what I would like to talk about today. And then everybody will say something that they've been studying, like this person has been doing museum research, and the other person will say, I've been reading Shakespeare, or I've been watching this video course on, I don't know, Marvel comics. Yeah.
Okay, Dina, and I'm sorry, I will constantly interrupt and ask more questions.
Yeah.
Like, for example, what if Eugene came, right? And you see, this kind of, I came to listen. Like,
that's okay.
That's okay. The reason I'm asking these questions because for just prepare, I feel very old. For 25 years, I was been running with my colleagues, and Anna was part of that, but not from the beginning. A group like that with different number of the people and whatever we experiment. And initially we called that, we didn't call it in any way. At some point our university asked us to name this group. And we had completely, this is kind of funny story, because we went to the store, women, few of us, and we went not specifically for that store. And we saw this wonderful chain key as a little yellow pig. It looks like amber pig, but it's a plastic pig. And we bought initially to ourselves. And once we brought to the meeting and showed this, and somebody said, and I don't remember who, wow, this can be our secret sign. So we bought to everybody these pigs. And so we call it pig meeting. And at some point, our administration wanted to include this information about the groups in a brochure, university brochure. And they want to say, pick what it stands for. And we had the whole content how we can create absolutely obscure, create abbreviation. So pick it, because they couldn't believe, of course, that pick is pick, nothing else. But we wanted to create. So the winner was Professional Inquiry Group. Again, it sounds very scientific, means absolutely nothing. Like, what does it mean? Nothing. And this is what was good. Because if you ask, like, what we discussed, and I was thinking, and Anna, this is my reflection actually right now. I was thinking, what's the theme? And I would say there are 4 themes there. Right now, we call it the Educationalist Club, by the way. So we discussed our research that in education usually. We discussed our teaching. We discussed our institutional life. By the way, the we meaning who are we? It's usually that mostly were graduate students and professors. And sometimes there were undergraduate students join us, but not for long, and it was not very common. And just about life, like what's going on in life. And I would say these 4 topics were primary. And the way how we're doing that, Dina, is approximately the same how you described that. So we have moderator, usually it's me, and we start like going in the circle. I'm going to the circle and say, Dina, do you want to share something with us today? And you might say, yeah, but it will be for 3 seconds. And I said, okay. And then Anna, I said, oh, I have actually big things too. I want to discuss, I need your advice, or I did this and that, and I want to share you. I'm kind of, Anna, what about you? Double M. And you might say, actually, I've read a very interesting paper and I want to, it's very disturbing. I want to discuss that. And somebody can say, you know, I need to write some paper for the class and I have like, it's just like, I'm dying. Can somebody help me to start doing that? So it could be kind of even schoolish type of thing. So we can go with that as well. It lasted usually at least 3 hours, not because it's set for 3 hours. It's kind of last. And then in past 3 hours were kind of cut off because people get hungry. And then we went to eat together. And sometimes we continue, sometimes not, whatever. And people come and go. So some people can come later and or some leave earlier and whatever. It's considered to be rather normal. Sometimes it created problems. Like, for example, Anna and I will come, I remember, it was happened one time in 25 years. That nobody was there and neither Anna nor I want to share anything. And so we left. And we learned that 5 minutes after we left, other people came. And they were seeing that nobody was there. It was for the Zoom, by the way, that time in Zoom. And they left, but altogether, if we just stay, it was normal meeting if we stay. But we thought like, well, nothing. And in this case, we kind of discussed that and thought that maybe other people just need to say that they plan to come, but maybe later. Because in a way, it could have been a good meeting. In terms of how frequently we're doing that, we initially for maybe 15 years, maybe 15 years, we did it every week, and then we decided that it's too often. So we're doing it every 2 weeks.
I think
Once in 2 weeks. Right? And now we actually, because it's become international, so we become it's become very bad time for especially Chinese people to meet. We are in United States, so it become very difficult for them to meet. So we have now 2 times of meeting. One Monday, and we need to change Mondays because will be teaching on Monday. So one Monday we meet at 3:30 p.m. American time, which is actually not good for Chinese people, but good for European people. And and another we're meeting, some Monday we're meeting very late at 8 p.m. and United States I'm talking about. It's kind of egocentric idea of very late, because for Chinese people, it's actually in the morning. It's kind of early morning.
Yeah, they
Right
are
now it's
usually
9
12
a.m.
hours difference. Yeah.
Yeah, it's right now it's a little bit, it's 13 hours, but it will be in winter, it will be 12 hours. So we also changing that. In terms of number of people, Dina, at some point we had like maybe 12 people, maybe even maximum probably was 15, I remember there was time. But I would say like 6 people kind of, that's good number of people.
Mm.
Um, So I'm just saying that, strangely enough, we're doing that. We don't do much about what you suggested, like a very interesting idea to do reflection. It sometimes happens naturally, like we decide that just something doesn't work. And like, for example, we came with this idea that it should be absolutely voluntarily people want to share something or not. The initial expectation that everybody should share something. And at some point, and I don't even remember when it happened, we decided it's too oppressive.
Right. Some people come just because they're interested in what other people want to say, but not to share anything on their own. So they are kind of supporting dialogue, but not leading dialogue. It depends on who is doing what at what time. It's interesting, but we all found that we have a kind of like shared topics in education that we were discussing. So all the topics were interesting for everyone. But I was also a part of similar group when I was a student at the University of Belgrade. But my group was constituted from my former high school friends who all went to study different things. Like we had mathematicians, engineers, psychologists, art people. But we continued because we started that in a high school to do homework together. And so we were hanging out in somebody's houses after or before, because we switched every week, we switched the shift where we're going to school. So we continued, and yeah, that was also going for about 4 or 5 years, as long as undergraduate studies went. And so we were kind of interested in each other's interests, regardless that somebody is not studying psychology that I did, but mathematics or engineering. We shared that because it was just like interesting to hear what other people's lives are about and what their contents are. So in that sense, there was a lot of shared content that's not somebody's primary interest, maybe completely peripheral, maybe not interested in all, but you just is a good friend. So you're listening to that friend and asking questions like because it's important to that friend. So that's another dynamic completely, but also very informal and not it's not for any kind of like summarizing or reflection. It's more like supporting somebody's studying endeavors as a friend, not as a co-learner or something like that.
Mhm.
Another important thing, kind of, nobody interested about outcomes in a way. Maybe I'm wrong, but in the sense that, I don't know, it's like people ask for advice or ask for feedback or ask for this or that, but it's not like, okay, at the end of our meeting, Eugene learned about. That was kind of not, it's more, I would say, kind of was an environment, if you think on what it is, more environment of being. It's more about being us rather than doing things. By the way, we not even consider this a learning experience in a way. It's just us being there. And in a way, success defined by how much people want to come back or not want to come back. And some people, like there is a lot of people left and will never come back. And that's fine. Or they come only for very pragmatic purpose. Like, for example, like asking advice how to search for job, for example, academic job. And they can come and get this advice and maybe not come again. So that's happened as well. So it's a little bit, if you think about that metaphor, and I'll say it in Russian because I don't know how to say that maybe not. It's a little bit проходной двор тоже. вот часть этого проходного двора, we appreciate that as well. It's not like everything is always проходной двор, but it is part of this проходной двор, if you understand that metaphor. No, it's kind of people come and go. It's not like, it's not the place.
A railway station.
Yeah, like they come for their pragmatic purpose and leave. So for some it's more instrumental, and for some it's more. Sorry, it just drives me crazy with that movement back and forth.
I can't stop laughing at that. You need to start timing it to the most important points of the sentence.
Okay.
Can
Because
you,
I love to use my hands, and well, unfortunately, movements. And by the way, it's some students actually videotaped me teaching in the class, and I didn't know why I'm so exhausted after my teaching, but I basically dancing there all the time. I'm moving back and forward and this and that. I was
does it react to the
I'm so
hand?
physically tired.
So the camera reacts to the hands, to the hand movement.
It's everything. Like I'm moving a head back and forth. Even that, it's reacting to the hands. And I'm trying to straight jacket myself and sit still. I'm moving on the chair as well. My chair has, wheels. So I'm moving there as well. So unfortunately, and I try not to. It's not because I want to do that. It's me, difficult.
Some children are just like that.
That was me always, and I was. By the way, my son is like that as well. We both, when we write, we walk. In order to write, we have to walk. That's our way of writing. Anyway, but I like that your horizontal learning. That's very interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Dina.
Now, what I wanted to add is that the way we look at it is we would love to simplify it so that it's not only for people who are reading anyway and doing kind of studies anyway and reflecting on things anyway. We want it accessible to a house mom who is doing some studies. She doesn't value it. Or, for example, and we would love for such a person to be able to meet up and get some support and empowerment in whatever they are doing. So that is why we think that a more structured way is the way to go, like a bit of a shorter meeting so that people can actually make the time. Yeah. Everybody comes on time and we try to end it in 90 minutes and not last 3 hours. And then everybody gets to say, they don't have to, but everybody has an opportunity to share what they've been doing. So things like that. And we are thinking it should be somewhat financially, very cheap, but motivating in that way. So you kind of put your money into that, and that also validates whatever you're doing. So like a subscription.
Interesting.
But you can choose the regularity. So if you like, you can come once a month. If you like, you can come once a week. So at your own pace.
No, regularity definitely works. In terms of why we have 3 hours, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's not like somebody said, let's have it 3 hours. It's timeless in a way. This is, again, it's the idea of being. In a sense that everybody regulate themselves. If you want or you need to learn, leave earlier, you have children, whatever, you can. And you should not feel guilty. You're not leaving earlier. You're leaving when you need to leave. Or on the other hand, it's also not forcing on other people who wants to stay longer and who wants to socialize more and so on and so forth. That also doesn't press them. So this is also the coming late is fine as well. It's not like, oh, you're being late. On another hand, it's true that for some people it makes them disorganized or whatever, and maybe they wanted. But on the other hand, this is exactly, I really like how you said that this is for autodidact people. So, or at least who is interested in autodidact. And of course, this meeting means that people has to be disciplined outside that as well. Self-discipline, I'm talking about self-discipline. So in a way, this kind of create this expectation of self-disciplining. At the same time, yeah, there is some kind of regularity that we meeting on certain day, and that day is small or stable, so that people can plan that.
But we also had what's now our book club. That was also part of the PIG meeting. Like once in a month, instead of just general PIG meeting, we would designate a book to read and then discuss that book. Now that's kind of like a separate group or separate meeting, not part of this.
Yeah, but that's different a little bit because it has too much focus for everybody. Like everybody expected to read that, although we expect that some people will not read it fully or not read it at all, and they're welcome. You don't need to feel guilty about that. You know, Dina, about that, and it's fine, and it makes us alive. Because part of this, by the way, part of this endeavor, and this took a long time to realize that it's we very much embedded in, and we meaning, I'm talking about myself, royal we, embedded in kind of this disciplinary society that constantly trying to discipline. And one way to discipline is by guilt, by creating guilt in people. And it's that guilt becomes such a drain of the energy, motivation, and everything else, because you start doing that because you're guilty, not because of interesting things or exciting things or so on and so forth. So the question is how to undermine this culture of the guilt. And
that's why I see this whole thing as like a celebration of personal interests.
At the same time, on the opposite side, it's to, and I hear you saying that, it's to keep creating some kind of helpful constraints for people, but without guilt. And that's why, like, we created whole this discourse about, like, I don't know, Dina, did you attended our book club, right? Did you come to our book club? Yeah. So we start with this ritual things, like who is a good student and who is becoming a good student. Good student who read the whole, whatever, is it a book or an article, and becoming is either did it partially or at least know the title of that, the author, or maybe not at all, but they're becoming a good student. So we don't have bad students. We always have either good students or becoming good students. And people who becoming, they have responsibility for asking stupid questions, like what's the book is about. Who's the author? Why? Who chose that and why?
Yeah,
which is
several
always
times
become profound questions.
Yeah, I haven't even opened whatever it is that we're meeting about today. I remember that it is very short.
Yes.
Read the first 3 pages of the first chapter. It will be very interesting and very easy read for you.
Yeah, and very provocative. Yes.
Very provocative. Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, it's that fighting the guilt is very important, because as soon as you get in this almost like vortex of the guilt, it's very difficult to get out of it, and it sucks all energy from you to do something. You become focused on this management of your guilt, that you didn't do your plan to do this and you didn't do that,
and I think it's also the pressure for the result. For example, when students are studying philosophy or whatever it is in university, so they have to like read the book by the end of the course, for example. And if they haven't, well, they have another course, and they kind of get past to it. And what if they're interested, but they need to switch to other books? This course is finished, so this looks like a little bit superficial. So why not let students study their books for as long as they like?
Or not at all, because it's part of this. In my academic life, it's part of selectivity. You should definitely be selective, because look how many books exist in the world, especially right now. You can see it's millions and zillions of books and texts and this and that. And our life is short, and then we die, and we have also other obligations in our life. So we should be very selective in this kind of selectivity, and not even finishing books, or not even looking, deciding, oh, I don't want to read actually this book, or I want to read that first 3 pages, so that will be enough for me, or I want to spend actually on one quote, but fully understand that, because that quote is such an interesting and exciting or problematic or disturbing. So that may be the whole thing is about. This idea of, there's one way and it should be this way, and it should be, you have to do it throughout and all of that. I think it's very problematic, especially for autodidact people, for people who engage in self-education.
Mm-hmm.
When you have to learn to make judgments about what's good for me. Is it good for me to finish the book or not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a very important part.
Yeah, and it's also quite interesting how every time you have no idea what other people will tell you, and yet somehow it connects to whatever you're doing. Like, just because you're switched on, and that's what you came for, to actually listen to whatever people say.
Mm-hmm.
And that,
and in my observation, we have very interesting people who more like to actually reply to other people rather than initiate their own kind of things. And I think that should be valuable as well. Hi. Welcome back.
Hi,
You're
Neil.
so big in comparison with the picture that we had. Yes. Yeah, so it's interesting how to create this ecology, almost like educational self-educational ecology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm also interested in the really dynamic of these kinds of discussions. Like, what are the very useful replies or questions? And of course, there is no probably a way to code or something. When did you feel that something was really helpful in a discussion with another, and or is there a person who is doing that, or sometimes somebody else comes from the side somehow? What connects with what for each person? That's very interesting to me.
Yeah, and probably this is one of the roles of the moderator to get people's attention to these moments. Yeah, so what was helpful, why it was helpful, who, which question helped you most, something like that.
Oh yes, so far we've finished the meetings with a quick circle of what did you enjoy? What was good for you? Was it helpful? Was it
yeah, and I can say like Dina's comment was especially interesting and helpful, and it made me think about this and that, something like that.
Do you also record them and make them available to people later?
No.
When we were doing it, just the two of us, we actually recorded all of them. But then once people started joining in, we asked, and they said, no need. So so far, no.
I had a very interesting relationship with this recordings. So our recordings was like initially we recorded, and then one problem with recording, there is again in our group now you understand. We know each other. Many of us know institutions where we work and so forth. And sometimes we discuss rather sensitive issues. And sometimes it's politically sensitive, sometimes it is personally sensitive, and so on and so forth. Because one thing we thought initially to kind of share almost database of the records. Then we decided because of that not to record. And then person who actually suggested not to record immediately said, "Oh, but I want to." There was interesting discussion, and I want to listen it again, piece of that, because it was so important for me, and I was so tired, and I know that it was so many exciting things said, but I don't remember them anymore, except that they were very exciting. So now we have this policies like that. I'm recording, but I'm not putting anywhere. And if somebody is interested, they email me and I send them link to that. And our whole idea is not to share it with anybody else outside of people who were there at that meeting. But outside of that, we're not sharing that at all. Or maybe if somebody asks for permission, but we learned that we kind of agreed that it's private.
Mm-hmm.
But nevertheless, we have records exactly because, and let me tell you, on a regular basis, we have somebody who asked me to send the link because they want to listen to that because certain things was said was super important.
Especially,
and it was,
yeah, especially if it's about somebody's research that they're really doing for their dissertation or for whatever serious reason, and they really want to kind of go over certain things several times to refine things for themselves.
and not only that, but also about teaching as well, like advice. But more important thing is sometimes you notice that it's important later. It's kind of initially it's like, oh, okay, or I don't agree with that, or this and that. And later it's placed in your mind and you say, wow, this is actually interesting and important. Now I want to know, now I want to listen for details. Because at that time I didn't listen carefully for details. And that's why I moved to Riga. So anyway, we had this interesting kind of relationship with this records. Our records.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that back to the important thing, it's kind of there is a very good word that Russian philosopher of dialogy Mikhail Bakhtin coined. It's not its known word, but he changed. For me, he changed the kind of relationship with this word. It's разноречие, and I really like that word because in especially with the English, because in English it's called this discourse and kind of different discourses. And this is what really happened in our group. And it's become very important that we do not purify what's our meetings are about. Like, for example, suddenly, like, Dina, you have a little boy, so we have parents there as well. So sometimes it would be about parenting. And people will not see that, oh, we are actually digress or whatever, since nobody knows what the whole purpose of our meetings are about. So it feels okay, and it feels very nice. And sometimes, like, you know, like in your case right now, people bring their kids there, especially in the physical space, because they just don't have babysitting and babysitters, and so they bring kids there, so it become part of that as well. So, and I personally really like it. For me, it makes it alive. That the fact that it can go in many different directions. But it's very interesting that you want to charge people like small, almost like symbolic price for that, and. So a little bit remind me, I was working in Latin American Community Center, and they had program for the kids, and they charge symbolic price like $1 or $5 a month for the parents in order, because it kind of create disciplinary effect on them. Because they're paying, it means it's serious. It means they will make efforts to bring the kids or make sure the kids will come more than without this symbolic price.
Yeah, I think it's very important because it's, well, the way I see is the target are not the people who already study and meet and talk about stuff and reflect, but people who don't value whatever they're doing. And then putting the money into that means like, okay, I'm actually doing it. I'm reading this and it's not nothing, it's something, or I'm.
Mhm. It's kind of validation part of that, kind of self-validation. Interesting.
Yes, so as our target audience, I see people who are immersed in their day-to-day stuff, I don't know, work, which they don't really like or something, or anything, or just their personal studies that, not personal, but if they're studying at some university and they don't really like what they're studying, yes, so they can choose themselves what to study, and they can find a place here where they can like plunge in it.
And where it can be seen as educational, whatever they're doing, where it can be acknowledged as not amusement or just rest, but education, which it is.
Yeah, and this is kind of a challenge, how to manage to, on one hand, not to purify that too much when it kills kind of diversity of possibilities. At the same time, like validate that. This is interesting challenge.
Right, but sometimes you don't know in advance what's education. You can decide maybe, like later on that what you thought was just like frivolous, maybe had actually very important meaning for you. And you did not realize it at the time, but post. So it's a very interesting thing that I don't think education is something that's very stable, or you can only do things like now it's my education and now it's entertainment, or something like that.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I mean. It's like most people kind of, well, most people who don't study this much and are not into alternative education, they see like, okay, I have a job or I have kids, and then the rest is all these silly things that I do that nobody cares about and I shouldn't care about, and it's just like time wasting or time filler, like however, and they devalue it, and it can be seen as education, and that's what I want to raise.
No, that's very important. Yeah, what we're saying, it's very, very important. It's like part of that in my teaching, which is, I don't like that, but it is teaching. And at my university, and students, when we create the space, some of them moving all the resources to the other stuff, which is for them, it's either instrumental or even completely oppressive, but it's necessary part of the survival. Despite the fact that they might say that this is my life and this is my survival, but they still moving all resources from their life to the survival because they feel such an anxiety to address their survival.
Right.
At the expense of their life. And of course, sometimes it's necessary, but sometimes it becomes almost like a mode of I wouldn't even call that life, because it's lack of life, actually, exactly. But because you too much focus on survival, even when you don't need to focus on that survival.
And it also is basically so many people who come into like consultations or some sort of thing like that. They just say, well, I don't really do anything.
Yeah.
and then you engage them in conversation, and it turns out that they do 100 things at the same time, but they just ignore them all as nothing. And,
Not important.
yeah. And so basically I see that it would be so amazing if we could create those islands of moments where you share with people and create those moments of self-reflection where you realize and acknowledge what you're doing.
Mhm. It's almost
Yes.
like rehabilitation of values, because many values, like they just put down. By the way, I think part of that, let me tell you that it's my observation, and I don't know if it's still true, but you know, I left Soviet Union, not Russia. So, and back then, high culture was valued. Like playing chess, it's serious, but playing, I don't know,
Cards? Cards?
cards, yeah, cards was not serious.
I would
of
say
course.
it's still mostly the same.
Yeah, yeah. It's here in United States there is that trend as well, but not as strong as since what my memory was in Soviet Union. In Soviet Union, so many activities were completely trash. Like, for example, knitting was bad, but if you bring some kind of art with something which is quite involved even knitting, that will be a high culture. That's good. And
Yeah,
so
it's still the same, I guess. Yeah.
Right.
yeah, and that's part of this. If you're working within the Russian culture, it's part of this rehabilitation of so many important practices, activities, relations that are necessary to do. Even raising kids is kind of for mothers would consider to be a kind of, it's not high culture, like, you know.
That's why I keep talking about mothers as the
Yeah.
prime audience, because
Mhm.
it's just so devalued.
Right. Well, many female jobs and not only jobs, but hobbies or interests were devalued all the time in everything. You know, like all this handwork, knitting, embroidery, this and that was kind of like, oh, it just kind of like women do that. Not big deal. And it's really sometimes involve very high mathematics and combinatories, you know, all kinds of things. Or
But you
cooking.
know, that's already interesting. You need to justify it by mathematics.
Right,
It's
right.
also very interesting.
To
The
be
value of that.
valued, yes.
If mathematics is not involved,
Right.
that's that.
What if it's just art, or not even art, just people enjoy doing that?
I bet that tailoring and sewing, they need a lot of engineering thought, because I was always bad at sewing and tailoring, and I always managed to find some kind of hidden dimension between the fabrics, because I put it all wrong. I don't know even how, but it really requires a lot of skill. And our grandmas, they all did their clothes by their own hands. So somehow they did it. They had this sense of other dimensions in tailoring.
Mhm.
And well, as a person with a million hobbies, I sometimes feel that I lack some system. Yes, so I feel like doing something, I do it, but I would like to feel some continuity. Like, last time I experimented with that. Now I can continue, or I can experiment with something else. And so some kind of journaling, yeah. And when you share it with other people, so this may provide this continuity. Yeah, and people even may remind me that, oh, you remember you told about that, so maybe there's some connection or something like that. Yeah, so it may help find some system in the hazardous hobby life. I mean, not hazardous, but chaotic. Yeah.
One interesting thing becomes for me, especially when your example of the second club, which is language, right? And it's interesting that you studying different languages. It's not the same and not even similar languages. It's not like Italian and Spanish. Like Ugandan, I don't know what kind of language even there. Is it Swahili or other? Probably there are many
Luganda.
How it's called?
Luganda.
Luganda, Luganda. And what's interesting for me, that you might also involve other clubs, more specialized, or not the clubs, maybe communities, but specialized. Like, for example, like, I don't know, and you may be going to the Spanish people who studying Spanish, or maybe you engage even with, I don't know what's your level, Spanish speaking people, and just to practice Spanish, and also other people who study Spanish. And Dina, you probably want to engage with Luganda's people who study in Luganda, but at the same time, it still makes important experience and necessity for you to meet and nevertheless discuss kind of almost like meta-linguistic and meta-educational issues that not necessarily specific to Spanish, or even if it's specific in Spanish, you still want to share with somebody who's studying other language like you, rather than being in the community who specifically want to kind of focus on studying, let's say, Spanish on.
Yeah, when we had our first meeting with languages, I found it absolutely fascinating the way it kind of jump. Is that how you name it? Like my motivation to learn. The next week, I was sitting every day for like every minute I could, like catch. I was just learning and learning because it was just, well, you suddenly talk to people who are learning all different things, and it's also fascinating. And then you're like, okay, and I can hear about them, and I don't have to learn all those languages. I can just hear little bits about them. And it helps you get a wider understanding that learning every language is possible, and all of it is so different and interesting, and you want to do more. And then, of course, depending on circumstances, you can't just study so much all the time, but I felt much more interested than I think if I just joined a group learning Luganda.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I personally, so if I had the chance, I would probably like to study every language possible, but unfortunately I can't. So, but I have a chance to hear what it's like, what Luganda is like, what Greek language is like, without actually studying them, but at least I have something, some knowledge. So it satisfies my interest a little bit.
Yeah, because we had someone come in and talk about Japanese language. We had someone talk about Greek, someone about Georgian, then Luganda, and then there are a few more people who haven't joined yet but want to, like with more European languages, and then there is Spanish, and then Anna was also doing a bit of Ukrainian, and so it becomes very, very cool.
Let me share some interesting experience. For some time, I was bringing students from University of Delaware to South Africa. And we had a very interesting program, study abroad program, where we placed students who are interested in education in local schools nearby Pretoria. And so one of the schools, that was a very interesting school, the kids were there. Most of them were not most, all of them were Africans. Some teachers were Afrikaans, white teachers, and some African teachers and from different tribes. But I never forget that I asked, there was a boy who was maybe 11 years old, and I asked him, "How many languages do you speak?" And he said, unfortunately, only 7. By the way, in South Africa, there are 11 official languages. And and by the way, that 7 languages that he mentioned, I asked him which languages is. Some of them nothing to do with each other. They didn't belong to the same family language group of the languages. Some not only not in the Europeans, but some of the within African languages. Some of them belong to some family, and some don't belong at all.
Yeah, almost all people in Uganda speak like 2, 3 languages, and then a few phrases or something like in more, because it's like there are, I don't know, 40 languages in the country or something.
Mhm.
But for the kids, you should understand that they mostly learn these languages in their native kind of environment, because Pretoria is multi-tribal place. And so there are kids with whom this boy was growing up were speaking many different languages and African languages. And then English, and I don't know, they might learn English and Afrikaans, which is mostly Dutch-based language in school. That I don't know. Unfortunately, I should have asked them. Probably in school, but other 5 languages, it was just available. And so nobody taught specifically like it. You need to teach them. You just grow up in multilingual environment and socialize with different people, and this is the best learning in a way, when you don't even notice that you're learning that.
Yeah, there's very little in terms of educational materials in any of those languages that surround me in Uganda.
Right, but for the kids, you don't have materials. You just have people with whom you speak.
By the way, one of our projects, what we did, this is interesting because we discussed with our students. We did books with the kids. We, meaning kids, because of course we couldn't speak these languages except English. So, like for example, we had a Polaroid camera that we brought there, and so we gave them kids. We have several of them, and the kids make pictures of insects, animals around, because there is it's very rich life was going on around that, or even just houses or whatever. And they put this the same picture with all languages that they know. They try to figure out how to write it down in the different languages, and which was interesting because school was teaching only writing about in English and Afrikaans, but not in languages. So they could speak languages, but they don't know how to write in them. And nevertheless, the teachers there, African teachers, they knew how to write that, and sometimes parents. So it was a very interesting project. What we did there, just about that. And they were teaching us, and the kids were so excited about that.
In former Yugoslavia, or also even now in whatever is Serbia, the north part, which is north of Belgrade, there are about 6 languages that were all official. Besides Serbian, there is several Slavic languages like Ukrainian, Slovakian, Czech, partly Czech or something like that. But then there is Hungarian and Romanian too, because all of these people live there and in a very small space. So it's not unusual that kids speak more languages. And you reminded me of one family where actually the father was from Great Britain, and he married a Serbian woman, but they lived in this area where a lot of Hungarians were. So in their house, they spoke Hungarian, Serbian, and he spoke English with his son. And then his son, when he first took him to England to visit his grandparents, his son was disgusted. Why? Because suddenly his secret language with his father that nobody else understood, everybody understood. He was insulted and disgusted, like, what? Broken secret. He thought it was just for him and his father.
Yeah, now with technology, my son doesn't have that at all because he knows that other people speak Russian too.
That's very good. And when I was in Israel, I have some family, and my grandnephew, who is self-teaching himself English through video games and doing other things on the computer, but not in the beginning. He didn't want to speak English to me, and I don't know Hebrew. But then he started to want to say more than he can say in English, and he would just use Google Translate on the phone. He would type in Hebrew and translate for me in English, and ask me to do the same backwards. So this is how we could talk with technology translation.
Yeah.
What was interesting, like I had a graduate student, she was from China, and then she returned back to China, and she had a daughter, no? And the daughter watched. They showed there a lot of American, British, and Australian, and maybe some others cartoons without any. Well, she would not even if they had subtitles. She would not read them because in Chinese subtitles she would not read. So she watched a lot. I was exposed, and I visited them, and it was 2018, and she was about 3 years old, a little bit less than that. And this is the first time it was absolutely evident how much she learned English, because she was replying to me in Chinese. Like I was talking, for example, first case it was, I was talking with her parents, like my friend and former graduate student, her husband, who also, they actually met in the United States because he was studying there as well. And we spoke in English, of course, and I asked that maybe the girl wants to eat. Maybe we should go to eat, and because it's maybe time. Maybe she's getting tired, and and of course, nobody expected she would understand what I'm saying, because she replied in Chinese to her parents that she doesn't want to eat and she's fine and she wants to continue working. And and they were completely shocked because they didn't. I mean, of course, they had this kind of hope that maybe she will learn English from watching American cartoons, because they discuss sometimes what's going on there and whatever. But nothing, no special lesson or anything, no kind of formal education. And she couldn't speak, but she could understand.
Yeah, our son is starting to use some Luganda, and like he knows quite a few words now, and everybody is excited. He says something.
Yep. And
Very nice.
like I also grew up in the like my grandmother's and her sister, my grand aunt, they spoke Yiddish in my presence only when they want me not to understand it. And of course, it was the most interesting thing because I want to understand it. And it's interesting how I couldn't understand one word, but I holistically at some point figure out like what they're talking about. And so it was very holistic. Like I suspected that this word means may mean that, or this is may mean, but I'm not sure because they intentionally wanted. If I ask them, they say, "Oh, that's nothing." Like they didn't want to encourage me at all. They want to discourage me because they wanted to secretly talk about me, and I was living with them. And of course, I like put all my efforts trying to figure out like what they say. Yeah, so it's interesting. So you call that horizontal learning. That's a very interesting term.
Yeah.
Are you trying to have like a diary of your experimentations, or having something kind of report?
Actually, at the last meeting, we had an idea that we should make a recap of our talks, but so far none of us did it. So
Now, you mean from like participant side, or do you mean are we writing things down which are happening and analyzing as it goes?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, like exactly. Like the later, not the former.
Mhm.
Like what's in a way, I feel very bad that there's no any documentation of our different experimentation and changing, and even I don't even remember many phases that we went through. Like I remember there was certain things were very frustrating, and we changed things, change out. The biggest thing to change is expectations. I remember it's not so much organization, it's expectation. Like we had in our head, like how it's supposed to be, and it didn't work. And for like the biggest things to change, like for example, one thing I remember when we started, there was ideas, everybody can prepare. And it didn't happen. I mean, it's happened and it didn't happen. And we get really frustrated with each other, angry, guilty, all of these kind of things. And later, kind of, it's fortunately, we didn't collapse because of that, but we transitioned to the understanding that what was wrong, not organization and not motivation, but expectation.
I came later, and that was not any more expectation.
Yeah. And unfortunately, we had conversations about that, but nothing was recorded.
Because it was face to face, it was not on Zoom. Nobody even expected, that's something to record.
Yeah, we definitely want to write things down as it goes because we want potentially to be able to teach people to moderate such groups and just spread it around. So we wanted to make it very simple, like you have, I don't know, 10 rules how to do it or something like that.
Yeah, tracking like that. So like what happened at some meeting or just what happened during the previous month, it seems like a good idea. So what changed? So what do you think about this? What do you think about that? That sounds good.
But part of that, and this is very interesting that you use that metaphor, which is my favorite as well. It's you call it AA. Actually, I call it AAA because it's United States. It's American Alcoholics Anonymous, AAA, not AA. But one thing that they have is a very useful ideology, in my view, is which is for example, to see yourself as always alcoholic. You can be dry alcoholic, or you can be like I don't know, a wet alcoholic, but you're still alcoholic. Whatever you are, you are. And I think it's extremely helpful. And we need to develop some kind of similar ideology in education. Like, for example, what I took from AAA or AA, I'm always thinking about myself that I'm a mixture of traditional and progressive educator. And that's something that I don't like in myself. But I'm kind of, instead of saying, no, I'm not this. I kind of accept that. That's why it helps me, because when I notice in myself doing that, it's not like I will be not in crisis. It's like, well, what to expect, of course. The question is how I need to put it down and how to work against that, but not necessarily to expect that I'm miraculously completely different educator. I will never do it because I think it's bad to be conventional educator or progressive. I will not do it. Of course I will do it. And something like that. I don't know. I'm just using it more like a parallel kind of things to develop, besides rules, kind of enough ideology that works against traditional expectations for the new ones.
Yeah, it's not about reaching a point where you become a non-alcoholic. It's not it's not about like going on a mountain.
Although other people can be like that. And this is what I like about AAA, some other people, but not you. And that's good because, again, it's they're not paralyzed. It's not creates this defensiveness, defense rationalizations. It's not make you learning helplessness and so on and so forth. It's just, it enables you.
But I think, you know, it's a matter of what I think, what you call teacher orientation. Like if you're sharing things with other people because not to teach them, not because you having some kind of like a position of a teacher role, but because something fascinates you. You just kind of fascinated yourself, and other people are not in a position to think that they must listen to you or learn from you, but just also
Anna, we're not talking about that. We're talking about, like, think about that. A lot of people, correct me if I'm wrong, coming to this, might come to these groups as kind of, they think that they're bad learners. And not only that, what they doing is nothing, as Dina, you said this, they are not interesting people, and so on and so forth. All of this things that the culture imprinted, and the dominant culture, and how to work against that,
right,
and how to learn to recognize your successes, your strength, your interests as legit and as important and worth of celebrating.
right.
And also that you can share in the process, but not just when you have done everything. You like created a perfect presentation, you have rehearsed it, but you just read 2 chapters of a book, and then you
like prepared the dissected whatever it is, animal or insect, but you study it while it's alive.
Yes, exactly. Right. Interesting project that you are doing, and one thing that you, again, if you're interested, you might want to join our educationist club to tell time to time. You might want to come and tell us like what's going on, or even to come to this open symposium just to share like what your struggles, what's your discoveries, what's successes, and like what's going on. That's very interesting, I think.
Right. Yeah.
So what's your next step? Like what's your right now? Where are you right now? And what's your...
We are creating a website. So just there is a space in the global network where people can come and read about us, and where can, of course, join. But as for the limits that we named, so the places, if it becomes popular, the places will finish very quickly. So we'll need to start enrolling new moderators and have them doing their clubs, organizing their clubs. So we'll see where it goes. But I hope that the site will be ready really quickly. I'm working on it. So we'll see how what it turns out to be in the end.
Yeah, and it's like we slowly are filling like group 1, then we'll start on group 2, and then we'll reassess at that point if we have any more capabilities ourselves or 2 groups. And then we have the language group, which is at the moment free, and we need to realize what we're doing with that.
And we would like to plant the idea into different environments, like universities probably, or something else, maybe at schools. So we'll see. So if we see a chance to plant our idea, so we'll do it.
As you know, we created this University of Students. Please feel free to utilize them. One thing that we have website, and at least we can put your link to your website, or alternatively, you can use that website. I don't know. It's built on Tilda. I don't know if you've heard this company on building websites. So we can share the resources and just do it there. By the way, we have just want to tell you that we created the society, Dialogic Pedagogy Society. I'm not sure that's a good title, but it's now difficult now to change. We registered it. It's non-profit organization, international non-profit organization in the United States. We're collecting money there, and so we have some resources. If you need resources, feel free to ask us. We can share this. That's one thing.
Thank you.
Do you know our website? Did you see that our website?
I've been on all of them.
No, I'm talking about University of Students. It's very easy. It's https:// I can actually write it down. Or Anna, can you write it down? It's University of Students, one word.org.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah. So again, you can be there, or I can give you, like, if you like to create website pages there, you can do that. Or we can, if you're doing it outside, we can give links to you. Again, if you need some resources, we can share. Feel free to utilize this Facebook group, University of Students Facebook group, and make all. You don't need to ask any permissions, just use that, like announcements, whatever. You don't need to ask anything.
Cool.
Another thing that is very interesting, I was thinking while Anna, you were talking about Anna with double N. This idea about moderators. You know how you can do it. You can, one way to do that, it's kind of, I forgot what the term, technical term for that, but it's doing like that. Instead of preparing them outside, you kind of prepare them inside through kind of apprenticeship. For example, you create
That's
a
what
group.
we were thinking. Yeah, you need to go through the group and then
And then you initially moderator, and then you passing that delegating to, and then you become together with somebody, and then you getting out, and then you getting completely out of group. And I know that it might take you even sometimes feel bad because you want to be part of the group, but it's a good idea to get completely out and start living its own life.
Process.
Yes, separation.
I think it's completely fine, and it also something we discussed right away from AAA, AAA, whatever, because you can't be the sponsor, without having been through the program yourself, right?
Right. Yes, exactly, because otherwise it becomes kind of alienated knowledge about something, and then you're reproducing not necessarily something else, but not. And not even reproducing is not the right word for that because it's a creative process. But yeah, so it will be very interesting when you'll start doing that. And so, are you planning to name the groups or not?
Well, at the moment there is this whole. At the moment we're naming it Just Learning Club, so that it can be maybe JL. Or something very simple, like an abbreviation like that. And we don't want to name any specific group. It's just that.
Although the story about the pig, it looks really charming.
Yeah.
Right. But I was thinking about what there is kind of meta name for that. Like, for example, there is meta name of something that's called support groups. Right, but many support groups are specialized. They specialize around particular issue, what the people looking for the support, and so it's interesting.
Yes,
to think,
it is a support group. Maybe it's like a learning support group.
No, but it may be. I was thinking about that, Anna, actually debating with myself before saying even that, because it may be a good idea what Dina was talking about. Rehabilitation of people's education, self-education that invisible for the people and not recognized in a way that when we call it learning things rather than just support group. Because support group is in the title, the focus is different. It's more like therapeutic, not only it's support, of course, it has huge educational value, definitely. But nevertheless, in the name, the focus is on the more like therapeutic, like support, like providing psychological support in a way.
It instantly connects with trauma. Why do you need support? Because you've been through trauma.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good. So it's if you think about deepness of that, so it's a good idea to create the title that actually focus on different things rather than just on. It will be support group for sure, but it's not necessarily in ideologically. It's not in the same kind of realm. It's a
We have
family,
for
but not.
curious people.
Yeah, it's
You
interesting.
know, there is a book, a cookbook here in United States, very famous, called Joys of Cooking. So I think maybe you can call it Joys of Learning.
Ah, that's very good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's nice.
Or joys of education, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like it's interesting to think about. Yeah, maybe it takes time before you will name that.
Yeah.
For some reason, I strongly think that it should be learning and not education, because education really would lead most people to think something different, I think.
Sure, well, whatever. It's the name. You know, the thing is more about almost like mythology or subconscious of the name rather than conceptualization of the name. It's like what it's like we talk about support groups. It's a very deep title, and because it strikes like trauma, problems, and so on and so forth, psychological therapy, and so on and so forth. Although in itself, it's not only that. Yeah, so it's interesting what you will come that. So, and I like that horizontal learning as well.
That's
Interesting
good.
term.
Good.
Yeah. So you're working that from January. Interesting. So how did you come to that idea from in the first place? What was?
Do you want to meet and talk about stuff that we study? Sure, I do. That was
Something
it.
like that, yeah.
And then we did, and we liked it, and we did it again and again and again, and it really helped, and it was really cool.
Interesting. Interesting.
Interesting. Yeah.
So, where you like you will create a website. We didn't finish with that, and you will focus on creating moderators, but also how you will spread the word about it.
Yeah.
Well, at the moment, just like this, like
Yeah.
a talk here, I think that we can easily make presentations like this one and talk about it in Russian or English. And so we'll see how quickly it picks up.
Yeah, just sort of the communities that we are in contact with. Teaching communities, something. Yeah.
Interesting. And I know that Dina, you just following you on the Facebook, you were recently participated in a very exciting, looks like I don't know, a group or whatever about this kind of navigation or something like that.
Yeah. Well, we're doing a lot of similar things with Anna, actually, because we are both in this community of navigators. And
That's where we met, actually.
Yeah. And I am doing this project of competence mapping, which is private consultations for people who are kind of lost. And then also we teach people how to do that. So at the moment we are doing a course on competence mapping. And then now we have joined some project with navigation plus English, where we will focus on teaching people English that will help them look for a job, talk about themselves when they're doing it, because so many people have left Russia and they don't know English. So that's another focus. And then there's this thing. So it's very interesting.
And you probably also participate in Ostrova as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually, I have realized that I want to start doing something in Uganda now, something to do with a self-directed education and maybe a center. And then suddenly in Ostrava, this girl appeared who is Belarusian/Russian, and who is into free education and who has been to Tanzania teaching children do arts in a school and who is making like creative films with that. And she just appeared out of thin air as soon as I decided that I wanted to do something. And we have chatted, and she might want to move to Uganda.
Oh. Yeah. That's it. And she's right now, where is she right now?
At the moment, she's around Moscow. She's, but she would like to go to Africa again, because almost anyone who lived there for a while would like to come back because it's wonderful.
Yes.
And yeah, we'll see if she does. Then we'll do something together.
And Anna, where are you right now?
I
Physically.
am in near Troysk, near Moscow. So
Mm,
it's
yeah.
not completely Moscow and it's not completely Troysk.
In between. Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
just outside Moscow and outside Troysk. So but I'm trying to engage into a local community. There is a community of very active women who are interested in self-empowerment and self-development. And they have chat for quite a number of people, like more than 150. And this summer I did some, there is a location for where you can hold free events for free. So non-commercial events, and I've been doing some writing classes, writing practices with them. So it's like half psychological, half creative, so something in between. But I can't say that a lot of people come, but just a few. There's a stable few people who do, and they seem to enjoy it. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I studied. We're writing a paper that about University of Students, because this is not a new notion. They will be surprised that it existed in Middle Ages. Since Middle Ages, this whole thing. And one thing that I studied in 19th century, especially in the United States, there was a huge movement of the self-education. It's actually lasted almost to the 20th century, and then it was basically killed by this credential education, which we have now almost everywhere. It took over the whole thing. But one of the interesting things there as well, in the United States, it was very diverse and was coming from different sizes and different times and different modes and so forth. But some of them were women's groups, and they started somewhere in the second part of the first part of the century, let me put it like 1830s and up. And they transformed. It was not only about the same thing and the same nature. So it was interesting, particular women's groups, they flourish in the United States. I don't know in other countries. I just, for some reason, I had only literature mostly about the United States, not what was going on in other countries.
Most of like these tiny schools that appear all around Moscow and St. Petersburg, the focus group that creates them are women, and it's mostly mothers and also not, but yeah, I would say 90% women. And the Astrava as well, like there are men, there are great men who like are interested, invested, and are doing stuff, but mostly women. And in Uganda, I expect it would be mostly women doing, who would be interested.
Yeah. But what I was talking about, it was not so much self-education for children, it was self-education for adults. And that's what's interesting. And it's primarily was thinking as adults. Like yeah, it's actually interesting that they didn't think about the children actually either good or ready for that, or neither, or whatever. But it's mostly about adults.
Yeah, but I think that because there is such focus on children and childhood and everything, that often starts as we need a school for our children, but then actually what you do is you create a space for yourself when you
Yeah.
do what you want. And
Yeah.
then most of
Yeah.
those women start doing so much more.
And
Right.
Eugene, while you were talking about education in the 19th century, I remembered the thing which is called Chautauqua, when there was like traveling educators who traveled from one town to another, and they gave lectures like a traveling circus, but with education. So it's also, it seems very nice.
Yeah. That was one of the movements, but there were quite a few other movements, and they were changing throughout the history of United States. Like, first of all, even voted for, and so on and so forth. And some of them were lecture based, some were more discussion based, some were more like book clubs, and some were. It's interesting whether or not things what you describing, or actually we are talking about, whether or not they existed as well, which is rather, how to say that, not always focused on particular thing. There was some kind of issue was like about how to say, self-education, about advances of the science, for example. They were brought of that, but it was still different that we were talking about. So I'm not sure they were the same in that nature.
Yeah, I think both education and well, probably everything was more specialized at that time, and there were not so many meta processes that could connect everything, which we now can probably.
Well, there is something was there which is common a little bit to Russia, 19th century of Russia, which is like moral education of the people, or like education of masses. That also was there. But I'm not talking about like self-education, which is less about educating somebody who is ignorant or somebody who is immoral. But it's more about like self-education. So I was more interested about that. And that was, I don't know if it's existed in 19th century in Russia. I don't hear much about that. Yeah.
Was
But
it
it was very
connected
popular
in United States? Was it connected with the suffragette movement too? Like
it was connected, but it's interesting. It started from what I've read. It started in actually 18th century in Great Britain, and it was male-oriented. It was around this new technology that started emerging, and it was actually Society of Mechanics, one of the first thing was, and then it came to United States. In United States, it became much more popular than in early 19th century, much more popular than in Great Britain. And then it starts moving in completely different directions. Like there were religious circle, which is very popular in the United States even before that, studying Bible studies, for example. But it started evolving, and it getting suffragette movement as well, but not only. What's very interesting that in women's kind of circle, some of them trying to like pushed away from that and say, no, we're not like that. It's nothing. We have nothing to do with suffragette movement. But some were very much, and some kind of in between, especially if we're moving to the end of 19th century. That was because it was changing all the time. It was changing what's the nature of that. But the women's group were very, very powerful in that movement. Although initially it was started by men completely, and then become mixed, and then become kind of women's group developed there. Well, and there were some women's group were exclusive and some not.
I think in Russia it was all within families, mostly in the estates, in the local estates, among the la noblesse. because I don't know, there were great distances that separated, for example, one estate and another estate, so it was just physically not very easy to get together. So it was between the members of the family, the multiple cousins, and probably between servants as well. I guess so. But in cities, there might be something like that. So yeah, what we know about is the salons, yeah, when people got together, but it was mostly about gossip, exchanging gossip, I guess, and discussing politics. It was not so much about education.
Well, some of them were like very esoteric, and like for example, spiritual, spiritual thing. But some of them not. Some of them were very many things about like arts, about gardening. By the way, women's and one of the interesting part of this in 19th century was exactly what Dina you were talking about, which is rehabilitation of women's activities, specifically women's activities, but to some degree men's activities as well that were not considered to be high culture. There was actually part of that completely focused on high culture, by the way. Some of this self-education that was focused on high culture, and some were kind of almost were going in opposite direction, kind of focusing rehabilitation, kind of other sphere of the human life that not necessarily covered by high culture. So, and some were in between, of course. So it's very interesting. But the differences from what we are trying to do is it's more from my reading again, and maybe I didn't spend enough time of studying. It's fascinating, the history of that. But I feel it's much more specializing about particular interests rather than it was like what we're talking about, especially you were talking about, when just support whatever people are doing or studying. Almost like maybe the word meta can be applied. But I didn't read anything about this meta.
Meta learning club, yeah.
Yeah, meta learning, yeah.
I think I need to go.
Okay, you see, this is what very normal. It's people like, okay, it's time to go. And which is fine. Thanks a lot for organizing that.
Yeah.
And you know, I will get the recording of that, cut first part of the when we just were socializing with each other, and put on YouTube, and then spread through the this Facebook groups.
Thank you.
All right.
And thank you so much
Great.
for having the
Thanks.
symposiums. It's such an easy way, kind of.
Yeah, this is very
And if you want again to continue that, let me put the link. This is more for Anna, for you. Just a sec. I need to switch. Yeah, for you, just because you can organize something else, or let's tell somebody to do that.
Or you can do storytelling.
Oh, yeah.
This is a link where you can put, like, we're having this open symposium for every 2 weeks. And so far, so you can sign for something and you can announce. I added one new column there, it's description, because I realized that title is not enough. And people want to know what it's about a little bit.
Thanks. Okay.
Yeah, so feel free and share with anybody who wants to do it. And by the way, it doesn't need to be in English. It could be in only in Russian. Maybe we need another column, what language it is. So the people would expect some language. That may be a good idea to add.
In general, a lot of freedom confuses people.
Yeah, well, that's part of our life. That's, by the way, that's what we're fighting against, in a way.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah, we have a word where it's becoming normal,
Yeah.
but you don't know what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that a lot of freedom confusing people because and people often ask for permissions, like, can I do this? Can I do that? And yeah, you can, and you don't need to ask
Just
permission.
step forward and do it. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
All
And again,
right.
if you need any resources, let us know.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
And good luck.
Yeah.
Thank you.
good luck.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and if
Okay.
you know someone who wants to join a group like that,
Yeah.
direct them
Well,
to it.
Well, first you need to describe that, and we will spread,
Mhm.
and I think that will be a good.
Mhm.
And that video actually will serve a purpose that as well.
The video, and we can also
what-
share that presentation that we
Mhm.
prepared.
Sure.
Mhm,
Mhm.
mhm. Good.
All right. It was
Okay.
a
Well,
pleasure.
Yeah.
yeah, it was a pleasure meeting
Nice
with
to meet you,
Anna.
Anna.
Nice
Nice
to meet you
you.
too.
Namesake.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.
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 Bye.